Everyone has an opinion about Canadian federal politics.
Oh, yeah.
I think our leader, Trudeau, I don't think I've ever heard him say a true word.
Oh, hello. Do you have a warrant to be here?
Oh, yeah.
It's time for a change in this country, my friends. A real change.
Wiggle and squirm as you might, it is really hard to put lipstick on a pig.
When I'm Prime Minister, I will keep my promises.
WTF.
Here.
I know this place is where I am. No other place is better than. No matter where I go, I am proud to be Canadian. I am, you know I am. The world that works.
The one we call Canadian.
Gentlemen, beam me aboard.
Yourselves are stealing the lifeblood from our city. You are a parasite who leeches off
just like you,
the culture of drugs. Excuse me? What?
I got the shotgun. Got the briefcase. It's on the game though, right?
And thinking that they could.
Justin Trudeau is a man on borrowed time. The Canadian Prime Minister is battling record high levels of voter dissatisfaction and resentment from his own Liberal Party. In his 9th year in office, Trudeau is now fighting for political survival. Some reports even suggest that if elections were to be held now, the Liberals may come a distant third. The rumblings in the Liberal camp have grown, with as many as 24 MPs asking for Trudeau to resign, and no later than the 28th of October, giving him very little time. Reports suggest that Liberal MPs even gave the example of Joe Biden and asked Trudeau to make way for someone else. So why has the Liberal Party turned against their leader? They didn't do so even when the party suffered back-to-back electoral upsets in the bastions of Montreal and Toronto. It's because under Trudeau's stewardship, Canada has upended its relationship with India, chose to provide safe haven to those that India considers as terrorists, and has violated all diplomatic conventions over the murder of a Khalistani terrorist named Hardeep Singh Nijjar. So who is Nijjar, and why is he so integral to Trudeau and his political survival? As Trudeau courts the rising
body, a man reported to be a member of a group that is banned even by Canada, and he's a Canadian government employee. That's the man you see on your screen here. That's right. A terrorist named Sandeep Singh Sidhu, who India has officially made an extradition request for, is a Canadian government employee. In other words, the salary of a man designated as a terrorist and wanted by the world's largest democracy is a Canadian government employee whose salary is paid by the Canadian public. The Canada Border Services Agency, or CBSA, a government entity entrusted with the very sensitive task of border security, has confirmed to an Indian news portal that Sandeep Singh Sidhu is one of its employees. I hardly need to spell out the alarming implications of this admission, but I shall do so because it has become clear now that the Trudeau government is keener to accuse journalists like me for foreign interference rather than even acknowledge how bad this looks for Canada internationally. That Prime Minister Trudeau's accusations have led to strained relations between the two countries is an understatement. Both countries have stripped each other, as you well know, of their high commissioners, and this ill-tempered exchange between India and Canada has led to many Canadian skeletons tumbling one after the other out of an old cupboard of dirty Canadian secrets. But the Sandeep Singh Sidhu admission by the Canadian government takes things to a dangerous new level. This confession by the Canadian government made to the Prince reporter Bismi Tuskin adds an alarming dimension to India's allegations against Canada. This angle confirms that Canada is not only a safe haven for India-designated terrorists, but that Canada actively employs them into state-funded positions of a sensitive nature that actually require extra background checks and scrutiny. Did you know that the CBSA, the Border Security Agency of Border Services Agency of Canada, that employs this terrorist Sandeep Singh Sidhu, do you know what it does? It's the Canadian state agency responsible for border security, immigration enforcement, and facilitating legitimate trade and travel. Just think about that for a moment, viewer. And I know the Canadian public is watching this as well very closely. A man wanted by the world's largest democracy, that is India, designated as a terrorist by India's National Investigation Agency, and likely a member of a youth extremist group banned even in Canada, is in a position to influence Canada's border security, immigration, trade, and travel. How has a person with ties to terror activities been able to secure a government job in Canada, especially in a sensitive area like border services, where the recruitment process involves some of the deepest screening of any Canadian government body? The only possible explanation is that Sandeep Singh Sidhu has been deliberately handpicked, deliberately chosen by the Canadian government to fill a sensitive post, specifically so that his criminal skills can be harnessed and deployed for other reasons, perhaps to facilitate the passage of criminals and separatists from Punjab to Canada. For all of Trudeau's grandstanding about terror, the Sandeep Singh Sidhu issue is a landmine that the Trudeau government cannot sidestep and has had no choice but to admit to when asked. The employment of Sidhu at the CBSA is a hilarious contradiction to Canada's stated position on counterterrorism. It also completely undermines, if not exposes, Canada's criticism of India for allegedly targeting individuals on foreign soil, as it implies a willingness to overlook and accommodate those accused of terrorism by India, even in public government positions. At the very least, Canada's admission that it employs Sandeep Singh Sidhu in a government job proves India's point, doesn't it, view? I'm sure you agree with me. And it gives the Indian government enormous leverage to argue that Canada's leniency towards individuals with extremist or terrorist links poses a threat to India's national security. Whether it is Canadian National Police documents suggesting the Canadian government's direct role in the Air India Kanishka bombing in 1985, or the public funding of a designated terrorist in government jobs, Canada has reached a reputational point of no return. Justin Trudeau and his government's hypocrisy, like I just showed you, has been beyond exposed. It is no longer just about exposing hypocrisy. Now it is about an act of war against India. After accusing India and its diplomats of alleged violent criminal activities in Canada, Trudeau's government, like we've just shown you, himself employs a man wanted by the Indian anti-terror agency. Sandeep Singh Sidhu, wanted for promoting terrorist activities in Punjab, and the murder of a Shaurya Chakra awardee in Punjab in 2020 named Balwinder Singh Sandhu. He's wanted for all of that. You heard that right. India's most wanted is on the payroll of the Trudeau government. The Canadian public pays this man's salary. Sidhu is a Canada Border Services Agency employee. In fact, he holds the position of a superintendent. Let's give you even more details. Canada's border agency has confirmed to a media outlet, The Print, that Sidhu is indeed its employee. According to the NIA dossier that has been shared with Canada seeking Sidhu's extradition many years ago, Sandeep Singh Sidhu is accused of promoting terrorist activities in Punjab. He also has links with Pakistan-based Lakhbir Singh Road, the nephew of Jarnail Singh Bhindranwale. Sidhu is also a member of the International Sikh Youth Federation, a group that reportedly remains banned not just in India, Australia, Japan and the US, but even in Trudeau's Canada. India Today, remember, was the first to report that India has shared information so far, including dossiers with the Trudeau government on Sandeep Singh Sidhu and several others. And now it comes to the fore via this confession to a media outlet by the Canadian government that Sandeep Singh Sidhu is a government employee. How was Sandeep Singh Sidhu, a man designated as a terrorist by India, how did he become a government employee in Canada? Wouldn't the alarm bells have rung when the Canadian government was conducting a background check on him? This man is wanted by the world's largest democracy, so how can Canada justify it? He cleared an officer trainee entrance exam, tells you a lot about Canada's quality control. Number two, he interviewed and was assessed psychologically fit. His credit was checked. Law enforcement and security database was verified. Got an enhanced reliability status, and then he was recruited into the Canada Border Services Agency, which makes me wonder out loud, viewer, that it wasn't about the alarm bells that could have been ringing when a background check was conducted on this man, because as you can see, there are infinite alarm bells about his terrorist and criminal ties. I go ahead and say that this man has been handpicked by the Canadian government in order to fulfill a particular role when it comes to immigration of criminals and terrorists into Canada. That's what is happening right now. Okay, I want to go across now and get a word in from India Today's Gaurav Sawant. He's been attending the BRICS summit and he's been keeping a very close eye on all developments taking place between India and Canada as well. Gaurav, the finger pointing and the exchange and the crossfire between India and Canada has been going on for more than a week now, but the Sandeep Singh Sidhu angle is explosive, because here we have a situation where a man accused of terrorism, a man that India has asked to be extradited, a man accused of killing a Shaurya Chakra awardee in Punjab in 2020 and tied to multiple terror activities that have been detailed in a dossier officially and formally shared with Canada. This man, Sandeep Singh Sidhu, Gaurav, is a Canadian government employee in the most sensitive possible position, border security, Gaurav.
Shiv, not just an employee, he's actually a superintendent in the Border Security Agency in Canada. And that just shows how grave the situation is, how serious the problem is that India faces with Canada. The External Affairs Minister, he's talked about this at great length. In fact, the Prime Minister at the BRICS summit, at this multilateral forum, he exposed the doublespeak of several countries when it comes to cross-border terrorism. And he did not name either Canada or the United States of America, but the situation is so clear. So whether it's a country like China or a country, that claims to be rules-based, order-based countries like Canada and the United States of America. Shiv, India has given multiple dossiers to Canada on Sandhu. India has given details of where he's working, what his role has been, how he has been involved in the killing of a Shaurya Chakra awardee in the Bhikiwind area of Taran in Punjab. All those details have been shared with Canada. He's not a fugitive from law. He's not somebody who's hiding from law. He's a part of law enforcement in Canada, and
Yeah.
India has made that very, very clear to agencies in Canada. And yet, Justin Trudeau, despite his pontification, he's taken absolutely no action against these elements. The point that you've raised, Shiv, is very clear. These elements are actually used by Canadian agencies and authorities against India. And these elements are actually elements of the Canadian deep state to destabilize India. And that's a charge that's been leveled, not just by agencies,
Yes.
that's a charge that's actually been said by the External Affairs Minister of India.
You know, Gaurav, the reason why the Sandeep Singh Sidhu issue is very different from what we've been talking about so far is that one wonders whether, the Canada or even the US government will be able to justify or defend something of this kind, because India has ticked all the boxes. They've supplied the dossier, they've supplied information, they've sought an extradition, they've given information about why they want this man to be extradited, and yet this man continues to be in a law enforcement role in Canada. Beyond embarrassing Canada, one wonders whether this is going to be enough to, in some ways, turn the narrative and actually see some kind of cooperation from the West. Will it happen?
Very unlikely, Shiv. You're absolutely right. Now, if you go by facts, Justin Trudeau and the Canadian administration should be deeply embarrassed. Joe Biden, the American president, and the American administration, the American State Department, they should be deeply embarrassed. But that's only when you actually believe in rules-based order. But when you use terrorist organizations to destabilize countries, and yet pontificate, that just shows that they believe in doublespeak, and they practice that doublespeak, and they create an ecosystem. They create an ecosystem even in countries like India that will parrot that lines. Now, none of that ecosystem, what the Prime Minister too has referred to in the past as the Lutyens Khan market cabal, even that ecosystem will not bring out these facts. And why? Whether it's scholarships that they get, whether it's the various junkets that they get, and junkets that are not just funded by Ghulam Nabi Fai and Pakistan's ISI, but junkets that may well be funded by the West. These people are beneficiaries of those junkets and will not raise these issues that you are raising. Why? Because you are bringing out the ground realities, and these aspects need to be raised. However, these elements will not do that. Here is a terrorist who's involved in the killing of a Shaurya Chakra awardee in Bhikiwind in India. And India submitted dossiers, and not just for one man. India submitted 26 dossiers to Canada. India has made a list of those who've been involved in activities. Gurmeet Singh, Gurmeet Singh, that's an entire list that the External Affairs Minister has spoken of, the ministry has spoken of. That entire list has been given to Canada. Interpol Red Corner notices have been issued, and yet this West, that entire ecosystem, they refuse to take action against these elements in the name of freedom of expression. Clearly, terrorism is not freedom of expression.
And if this isn't state-sponsored, public-funded terrorism, I don't know what is. Those phrases no longer sound extreme or like exaggerations at all in the context of what's happening in Canada. Gaurav, thanks very much for getting us a perspective on this developing story. Thanks very much for the moment. Also want to get an expert view from India's most respected strategic thinker and columnist, Brahma Chelani. Mr. Chelani, thanks for your time once again on this unfolding story. The Sandeep Singh Sidhu angle, Mr. Chelani, brings a very different dimension to what we've been talking about so far. A man who India has sought the extradition of, who has supplied information about for a long time now, turns out to be a Canadian government employee, and not just any old government agency, but a superintendent in border security, a law enforcement role. How do you see this?
Canada, unfortunately, has become the global hub of the Khalistan militant movement.
Yeah.
And as a government policy, Canada is giving refuge to known militants, terrorists, and other extremists from India. In fact, it's also giving visas to known gangsters despite Indian government warnings. This is the irony of it, that the Indian Foreign Minister has said on record that despite Indian government warnings, specific individuals from Indian Punjab who are known to be gangsters have been given immigration visas by Canada. And the Indian ambassador to Canada, the High Commissioner Sanjay Verma, before he left Ottawa, he said in an interview to Canadian media that Palestini extremists and terrorists are deep assets of CSIS. CSIS is Canada's main intelligence agency. In fact, Niger, as we all know, was the chief of the Khalistan Commando Force. Look at the irony of it. The Khalistan Commando Force is a terrorist organization in Canada, in the US, in Britain. And yet, Niger was given sanctuary by the Canadian authorities. And his terrorist background has been largely suppressed from the Canadian media. They refer to him as a cleric, as a priest, which he was not. They call him a Sikh leader, which he was not. He became the president of a Gurdwara, but that's how the Sikh extremists are now controlling the funds. They have captured the Gurdwaras in Canada and in the US and in the UK. But Niger was not a cleric or a priest. But I think the larger issue is this. And in fact, the fundamental issue that we should not forget is that the developments that led to the Air India bombing in 1985, those developments have not changed Canada's approach toward providing sanctuary to Sikh terrorists from India. These Khalistanis who blew up the Air India Flight 182, according to two separate Canadian inquiries, the mastermind of that bombing, Talvinder Parmar, was provided sanctuary, and India's request to Canada to extradite him was refused. Ultimately, despite that bombing, in fact, there were two bombings of two separate Air India flights. One misfired and killed two baggage handlers. But despite these twin bombings, not a single perpetrator was brought to account by Canada. Talvinder Parmar was ultimately killed by police in India after he sneaked into Punjab from Pakistan. But look at the irony of it, that a terrible terrorist act happens, and it took Canada 21 years to set up a commission of inquiry into the bombing. And I think, in a way, history is repeating itself. To some extent, we should blame the Indian governments. Successive Indian governments let Canada off the hook after the Air India bombing. There should have been sustained pressure on Canada for accountability, for bringing to justice the perpetrators of those twin bombings, which we did not. We exerted no pressure on Canada. And today, Canada has become the international epicenter of the Khalistan movement. It's not just the demand for Khalistan. If it's a peaceful demand for Khalistan, there wouldn't be such an issue. The fact is that these people are glorifying terrorism, and regularly, at regular intervals, they are making terrorist threats against India. Look at the number of hoax bomb threats that Indian Airlines have received in the last 10 days or 11 days. Just today, 80 bomb threats were received by Indian Airlines. This is totally unacceptable. The guy, for example, the guy who has now publicly issued a video message asking people not to travel by Air India between November 1st and November 19th is based in New York, and he is a dual citizen of US and Canada. Now, how would the US react if somebody who was designated by the US as a terrorist was based in India and issuing these kinds of threats against American Airlines or Canadian Airlines?
Absolutely.
And I think we need to exert pressure on both Canada and the US because they are working in tandem.
Yeah. How does that happen, Mr. Chelani? In the context of both the Sandeep Singh Sidhu angle and the other things that you've just mentioned, and completely accepting that successive governments have let Canada off the hook, whether it comes to the bombing of Kanishka or the recent cases that we're talking about right now, including Sandeep Singh Sidhu, what should the Indian government do next? How does it give it back and ensure that Canada and the US don't get off the hook?
Well, first we need to stop being reactive and defensive. Why are we defensive? Look at this guy, Pannoon, who sits in New York and he's been making terrorist threats against India.
Correct.
Now, earlier he threatened New Delhi airport. According to Indian agencies, he threatened to disrupt Indian railways, etc. This is unacceptable. The fact that somebody releases a video message and warns people not to travel by Air India between specific dates, and yet there's no statement from the government of India asking the US to extradite him or bring him to justice. We should make the demand. For example, in the case of Mr. Sidhu in Canada, the fact that Mr. Sidhu is an officer of the Border Security Agency, and that he's wanted in India for terrorist crimes. This is an issue that India should be raising. Not just a statement here or saying that this information has been shared with Canada. There has to be sustained pressure on Canada. There's so many of these elements in Canada and in the US. In fact, that reminds me of what the then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi said a few months before she was assassinated. She said publicly that the CIA was involved in training and arming Khalistan terrorists in Pakistan. In other words, the CIA was working with ISI, according to Mrs. Gandhi.
Yes.
What she said, and look at the developments that followed. Her killing, now we are talking about the painful memory of the Air India Flight 182 bombing. All these developments could have been averted had successive Indian governments shown a spotlight on Canada's role, on Canada's status as the hub of militant Khalistan movement, especially of Khalistanis who glorify violence and terrorism, and who make terrorist threats against India.
This conversation is going to continue because India's next step continues to be in suspense. The two sides have issued statements against each other, but now there appears to be a lack of clarity of what that next step from either side is going to be, and we will continue to track it. And as always, thank you very much, Brahma Chelani, for joining us and providing your perspective on this unfolding big story between India and Canada. These escalating tensions between the two countries have taken center stage, obviously, as both nations exchange accusations. Canada is under scrutiny for its ties to individuals, like Brahma said, with terrorist and extremist networks. And we've got information on the entire dossier that's been shared by India with Canada. Take a look.
Tensions between India and Canada are escalating amid the ongoing diplomatic standoff over the killing of Khalistani terrorist Hardeep Singh Nijjar, where Trudeau government is targeting top Indian diplomats. India added Sandeep Singh Sidhu, a Canadian Border Service Agency official, to its list of fugitive terrorists seeking his deportation. Despite his position in Canada's government, Sidhu has been linked to pro-Khalistan terrorist networks. He's accused of playing a key role in the assassination of Shaurya Chakra awardee Balwinder Singh Sandhu, a hero of Punjab who stood against Khalistan terrorists during Punjab's violent period. The terror connections reportedly extend to Pakistan-based Khalistani leader Lakhbir Singh Road and ISI operatives. With charges of cross-border smuggling of narcotics and weapons, India has raised serious questions about how a Trudeau government official could be playing a terror kingpin's role. Despite serious allegations, Canada appears to be protecting individuals connected to extremist groups. Canada's Foreign Minister, Melanie Joly, went on to put Indian diplomats on notice.
Canadians were being intimidated, victim of extortion, or even receiving death threats because Indian agents or agents and diplomats from India were linked to these criminal actions. We've never seen that in our history. That level of transnational repression cannot happen on Canadian soil.
This comes after Canada Prime Minister Justin Trudeau accused India of targeting 6 separatists, further straining ties. Is Trudeau actively facilitating anti-India terror using Khalistani elements? Bureau Report, India Today.
And the Indian High Commissioner to Canada, who had to be pulled out in the middle of this entire diplomatic storm, has just spoken. Let's cut across live to that big interview.
सभी नागरिकों को प्रदूषण मुक्त वातावरण में रहने का अधिकार है। इस पर केंद्र सरकार को फटकार लगाते हुए उसका ध्यान भी केंद्रित किया।
कई दशक बीत गए ये बात सुनते हुए। सुप्रीम कोर्ट कभी गेंद फेंकता है दूसरी दिशा में।
Apologies for that. We will take a break and come back to that interview. Big apologies to our viewers for that. There was an error on our part. We'll come back after this very break and we'll get you that interview.
Razr 50 Ultra comes with Google Gemini. Motorola Razr 50 Ultra comes with Google Gemini.
Hi, I am AI anchor Sana.
He held a road show to the collectorate to file his nomination today. Remember, the left and the Congress are both part of the India Alliance. The BJP's Navya Haridas also filed her nomination today. Haridas has worked for a decade as a councillor in the Kozhikode Corporation. The BJP candidate hit out at the Gandhis, calling their Wednesday roadshow an eyewash and accusing them of gathering a crowd of non-Wayanad residents to show their strength.
Today between 12 and 1 I am filing my nomination, and Bharatiya Janata Party's state and national leaders will be along with me while filing the nomination. I am so excited and happy that party has offered me such a wonderful opportunity. And we started the election work a couple of days back. There is definitely a need.
This government has more than doubled the national debt. Imagine that this Prime Minister is responsible for more than half of this country's national debt. That we see crime, chaos, drugs, and disorder reigning in our streets. But the good news is this is not truly what we are as a country. This is not what we are as Canada. This is not what we were before 2015, and this is not what we will be after we have restored the kind of responsible leadership that this country needs. Mr. Speaker, the economy is not just about money. The economy is really about providing people with the opportunity to engage in meaningful work and have the joy and sense of purpose and mission that comes from working hard and providing for the next generation. And with that in mind, we have an agenda. The Conservative Party is proposing an agenda that is based on restoring this country's enthusiasm for development. We are a country that has in the past undertaken great nation-building infrastructure. We are a country that builds things. And in the process of building things, we give jobs and opportunity to each other, and we also strengthen our sense of national unity and purpose. In the 19th century, it was our cross-country railroad. Today, in the 21st century, we need to become a country that is building great things again. We need to build homes. We need to build national energy infrastructure. We need to support the development of energy infrastructure in all parts of this country. This is Canada's opportunity in this new struggle. Let us step up and seize it. Let us do what is right for our country, for our people, but also let us play our essential role in the world, rejecting liberal anti-development bills and standing up for Canada and for freedom everywhere by developing our natural resources and creating jobs, opportunity, and prosperity for the Canadian people.
Welcome back to Question Period. Things appear to have gone from bad to worse for Prime Minister Justin Trudeau this week. It kicked off with another by-election loss in a Liberal stronghold, this time in Montreal. Then Transport Minister Pablo Rodriguez announced he was stepping down as minister and as Quebec lieutenant as he launches a bid for the leadership of the Quebec Liberal Party. That announcement wasn't unexpected, but his decision to remain as an independent MP came somewhat as a surprise.
I have also decided to sit as an independent MP until the launch of the leadership campaign next January. This is in order to avoid a costly by-elections a few weeks or months before a general election.
Now, sources have confirmed to CTV News that plans are underway for a bigger shuffle in the next few months, with more cabinet ministers weighing their own decisions about their future. Here to dig into all of that is our Sunday strategy session. Corey Tonight was Ontario Premier Doug Ford's campaign manager and former Director of Communications for Prime Minister Stephen Harper. Kathleen Monk is a former NDP strategist and Director of Communications to the late Jack Layton. And Scott Reid is a CTV News political analyst and former Communications Director to Prime Minister Paul Martin. Hi, everybody. Good to see you. Let's quickly, last time we met, we talked about looking ahead to the by-election. Scott, I'll start with you. A lot of effort from the Liberals this week to downplay how big of a deal it was. In your view, how big of a deal was it, or is it?
It is a big deal. I
Carbon
mean,
tax, Carney, and the heat.
The air is coming out of the bicycle tire of the government, and you can just see it in people's faces, and you can read it in their body language. And so the fact that bad news is expected still doesn't necessarily help you when the bad news arrives. And I really did think that you could feel the sense of resignation on the part of a lot of cabinet ministers, and particularly caucus members. People sort of shrug their shoulders and say things like, with their face, well, that's where we're at now, man. That's how this cookie crumbles. So again, the persistent question for the Liberals isn't how bad is it now? It's bad. The question is, how do you get out of it? What's the path to victory? What's the path to even being competitive again? And, you know, we're going to work hard and we're going to keep delivering is the only message note from the government, and that's cutting zero, and with anyone internally, and certainly is cutting zero with the public.
When we were gathered on radio, Kathleen, this is Hi there, and welcome to Power Play. About that the by-election outcome wasn't even mentioned in caucus. I reached out to a number of MPs, and they confirmed, not a word, and they were flabbergasted by that. What does that say to you?
I think in some ways they're shocked that this bad news keeps on coming, but I don't know why. For over a year, we've been saying to the Liberals, turn the ship around. Where's the narrative? What's the policy that's going to correct these polling numbers? And we haven't seen that from them. And I wonder, I was thinking about this last night. Does it go back to 2015 when Justin Trudeau was first elected and his staff team and complement that he surrounded himself were really just loyal implementers? They weren't presenting kind of a team of rivals, right? They purposely ousted people, like Scott, the Martin crew, other crews, the Chrétien crews, older Liberals that would have had that challenge function, right? That challenge function at the table, that critical thinking to push back. And I wonder if it's there both in the cabinet table and the staff table to actually develop that plan, because we didn't see it. And then we did see almost, a really defeated Justin Trudeau earlier in the week in cabinet ins. And then again, the silence that happened at caucus. I think the question that, we have to be asking ourselves now going into the week ahead is, what more bad news comes for the Liberals, right? Because it's just they just keep on getting hit by it time and time again.
Well, Corey, you've been on the inside of a government.
Just a fact check.
Yeah, I know you weren't
just
ousted.
She
means people who are pushed back were.
I'd been on Exile Island for 10 years by 2015. I just wanted to make that clear.
But you weren't drawn back in. That's the thing.
Got it. I think you're referencing the fact that there was, in 2015, they remember the message was not your grandfather's Liberal Party, right? Like they went out of their way to surround themselves with people who had a different vision than perhaps the party had held in the past. Corey, I just wanted to touch on sort of Kathleen's last point. You've been on the inside of a government in the last, iteration of it, and I was reminded this week, particularly with Rodriguez's exit, thinking back to Seamus O'Regan, of covering in 2014 and 2015 the Harper government when John Baird left and Jason Kenney left. At the time, you didn't know what it signified, but in retrospect, it was the air letting out of the tire. Is that your sense right now?
I think it is, although there's a bit of a difference in those two situations. The Conservatives were stalled at, in the low 30s and really didn't move in 2015. But in the low 30s, you can, look yourself in the mirror and convince yourself that there's a path to victory at that level of support. It's very difficult when you're at like 21, 22 points to look yourself in the mirror and say there's a path to victory. And so, yeah, I think the dynamic is very similar, Vashi, but I think the degree to which it's obvious that the things are not going to work out well for these guys unless something very radical changes is obvious to everyone except maybe one or two people. And clearly one of them is the Prime Minister himself, who seems to live in what Steve Jobs used to be described as a reality distortion zone. Like it's just absolutely mind-boggling that you could have a caucus meeting and not talk about losing one of the safest seats in the country. Crazy.
Scott, when it comes to the possibility or the probability of doing what the three of you are talking about and what I feel like we've been talking about for 18 months, putting forward something on the table that is dramatically different if you're going to keep the Prime Minister in his position, there's still no signals that's going to be the case. They really seem to be bent on the idea that the contrast between them and the Conservatives will serve them well in the general election.
Well, and I think that's why you do feel a note of resignation among a lot of Liberals and even caucus members, because there is no effort to describe or characterize or portray a path to victory. And so you get this, we're going to work hard, we're going to do better, we're going to listen harder. And what? The Canadian electorate that keeps expressing its disapproval will somehow turn around. And so you do hear rumors that after the election in the United States, the presidential election, that they may shuffle cabinet. Maybe that will give them an opportunity to change the script up. But
from the RCMP are extremely concerning, and they must be taken seriously, as opposed to what has taken place tonight in this House. And this debate is primarily about the Prime Minister, who has the power to take them seriously and has not done so. And any foreign interference from any country that we have been hearing about in this House, outside of this House, with this government for years, needs to be stopped. Our government's first job is to keep citizens safe from foreign threats. The very fact that we are here in this place debating such a serious issue demonstrates that the government has failed. Our government has failed in its obligation to keep this country safe and secure the integrity of our nation. And it's a natural consequence of 9 years of incompetence, of chaos, of an attitude that puts dividing the divisive nature of this Prime Minister over the security of the public. And we've seen it time and time again, and we've seen it particularly in the last year. Canada has become a playground for these activities. And you hear it, and the evidence is there, and multiple people have said it out loud on record, and still it's ignored. And while tonight's debate descends into unserious political distractions, Canadians need to know who knew what and when and why it took so long for the government to act. While we're here to address the allegations about foreign interference in India, this is about much more than that. It's certainly about India, but it's also about Beijing. It's about the tyrannical regime in Iran. It's about all of the times that our Prime Minister made a mockery of our democratic processes and, frankly, our values. Every Canadian should be concerned because it is putting our lives and our freedoms and our country at risk. The allegations that have been made are serious, incredibly so, and they should be investigated and pursued to the fullest extent of the law. As a country, we must stand resolutely against the attempts of other actors to interfere with the rights of our citizens and our democratic process. The idea that a foreign state would even attempt anything near these allegations certainly merits more than the anemic response provided by the Liberals at every turn over the last 9 years. Furthermore, any suggestion that individuals collaborated or colluded with these attempts or in any other attempts should be fully investigated and, again, pursued to the fullest extent of the law. That's really not up for debate. But here's what these suggestions should not be, Mr. Speaker. They should not be used as a means to score cheap political points that nobody is buying anymore, to divide our nation into smaller and smaller groups, into smaller and smaller factions. What this Prime Minister did when he appeared in front of Justice Hogue last week is exactly that. He went there with one mission: to level unfounded and unproven and unfair allegations against members of this party and members of his own party, casting aspersions. Now, you have to realize, Mr. Speaker, if you can't name the parliamentarians, then it should be equally it should be equally wrong to say anything about them or say what you know or their party affiliations. And he frankly cast aspersions on the entire House and then walked away from the podium. It's behavior like that that is unbecoming of a Prime Minister and that has made a mockery of this whole process. And if you look outside of this House and you listen to what people are saying, it has made a mockery of this entire issue. And that's unfortunate because it is a serious one. He should be less focused on trying to make this a mockery, and he should be more focused on the serious implications that this has for our national interest. He is more than just the Liberal Party leader. I don't know how long he's going to be the Liberal Party leader. He is the Prime Minister, and he should remember that. But I suspect it might be difficult when his caucus is revolting against him, and he needs to focus at least a little bit of attention elsewhere for the first time. You know, my parents always told me growing up that if you're going to make a serious allegation about, Conservatives being part of something, you would need some evidence to back it up. And that's what we're asking for. We're asking for him to release the names. If you have evidence about what the Prime Minister has said, has made claims about other MPs in this House, then he should release the names. And we all know that he can do that. We're asking the Prime Minister to release the names of the individuals that have been accused so that we can deal with the actual problem, so that we can move forward constructively. That's what Canadians want to know on this and on the matter at hand. But he won't, because this is another crass and pathetic attempt by the Prime Minister to divide and to distract and to deflect his mistakes. Maybe they're not mistakes. Maybe it is an intentional hiding of the facts that he has known for a very, very long time, rather than trying to fix the issue at hand or looking serious while doing it. He's trying to cover up the fact that his caucus is in open revolt of his leadership, and this is a convenient distraction. He's trying to cover up for the fact that he's destroyed our economy through higher taxes, higher inflation, higher government spending. He's trying to cover up for his own failures in protecting this country and safeguarding the rights of Canadians And while this is behavior that is unbecoming, we really shouldn't be surprised from this Prime Minister. It's probably even benefited him electorally in his prospects. Otherwise, why hide anything at all? The opposition parties have acquiesced to his tactics of swearing them into secrecy so they can't do their jobs and they can't effectively prove their case. And that's been proven tonight over and over again, where any opposition leader who bothered to speak in this House to this motion couldn't hold the government to account. And if they really knew that there was something in the documents, then rather than sitting back, they would have asked the government what they have done about this, and it is exactly nothing. The Liberals have muzzled their opposition so they can continue to turn a blind eye at the obvious wrongdoing that has brought, and they've brought the cabal along with them to acquiesce to all of this. They used to be members of an actual opposition that could hold the government to account, and now they've been silenced. And you didn't have to look very far to see that they have been completely ineffective at prosecuting this government's failure on foreign interference. After all, it's this Prime Minister who turned a blind eye when foreign interference was coming from Beijing, when the communist dictatorship was spreading misinformation and even buying Liberal Party memberships to influence nomination races. To that I say, release the names. This is the Prime Minister who took 6 years to declare the IRGC a terrorist organization that we all know that they are. And they still use Canada as their safe haven to fundraise, to recruit, to intimidate our own citizens, and to possibly play a role in our electoral process. To that I say, release the names. And it is this Prime Minister who employed the Emergencies Act, trampling the rights and freedoms of Canadians for purely political opinions when they didn't agree with them. And to that, Canadians say, release the names. This is the Prime Minister's whose ministers mysteriously sat on a CSIS surveillance warrant on a Liberal power broker for 54 days. To that I say, release the names. And this is a Prime Minister who appointed Liberal insiders and personal friends to investigate the misdeeds of his own government. These are the things that happened under the Prime Minister's watch, and it's his weak leadership that is the reason why it is happening more and more. Our adversaries know that Canada is an easy target and that they can get away with almost anything here. The Prime Minister is actively in the process of proving them right at every single turn. We have a common sense ask of the Prime Minister. It is release the names. Canadians want to know. Release the names of the individuals who have collaborated with Beijing against Canada. Release the names of the individuals who have collaborated with India against Canada. Release the names of all of the people who knowingly and wittingly work with hostile foreign states for personal gain. It is an easy thing to do. The Prime Minister did it once in the House of Commons already. He can do it again, but he won't. Prime Minister doesn't seem to want to do that. He seems to want to continue this sideshow, the political theater, as long as possible, because it allows him not to talk about the issues that he doesn't want to talk about, because he's lost all semblance of control. He looks unhinged. Rather that he continues to insist on some nonsensical argument about secret briefings when he can walk over right here, 2 sword lengths apart, 10 steps at best. He's actually pretty tall, so it's probably less than 10 steps, and he can tell the leader of the opposition exactly what the problem is, and he won't do that. You know why? It's because he's using this for political gain. If the member from Carleton takes the briefing by admission of the Prime Minister's own Chief of Staff, he will be unable to speak about the results or act upon them, just like the Prime Minister has failed to do. He can't do that in any way. His own office says that. In fact, the former leader of the NDP says that too. He deserves the information and not the handcuffing. The CSIS Act actually allows for this. The CSIS Act allows for anybody to offer any information on anybody about the risks of foreign interference without forcing them into sworn secrecy. And I will repeat that. The CSIS Act actually allows the Prime Minister to walk over here and tell the Leader of the Opposition everything he needs to know. But you know why he's not doing that? Because he doesn't want to deal with the problem in his own caucus. But the government insists again and again on secrecy without ever telling us why. I'll tell you why, Mr. Speaker. It's because he's hiding things from Canadians once again. It's because he is scared. It's because he has benefited from it politically. So we'll have to ask, what is the Prime Minister hiding? What is he so scared of? We know that there are individuals from all parties who are rumored to be implicated. But Conservatives aren't scared of anything. If the government acted, Canadians wouldn't be asking questions about why they're keeping secrets. And I think everybody would be better off. Every single member of Parliament that has now had the Prime Minister cast aspersions on them. That's irresponsible behavior from a Prime Minister. The sooner the names are released, the sooner we can take action to ensure that our institutions and our political parties are free from interference. But otherwise, it's going to get way worse from a variety of actors, from a variety of places. Because like I said, they know that Canada is an easy place to do their dirty deeds. Tonight's debate is another example of how the Prime Minister has failed on foreign interference. The Prime Minister at the Hague Commission admitted that our intelligence agencies have been gathering information for years that India has been committing foreign interference on Canadian soil. Yet, it is clear that he did nothing to act on it, even after a real and present danger to Canadians was known, and an act was carried out. And people have lost lives. Even when provided with the opportunity to protect Canadians against extortion, one of the violent actions that the RCMP has accused Indian officials of engaging in, they voted against the bill. It was a bill by my co-deputy leader from Edmonton,
We got a Canadian
C-381, the Protection Against Extortion Act.
It took a dive. Hey gang, just Aaron right here, Canadian Looney. We're gonna go for a walk to show you how beautiful this place is. And also, have a discussion about this corrupt, very dirty Trudeau cabinet. We're gonna take a look at not all, but most of the ministers. We've got a bunch of losers like Sean Fraser. There's a bully from Nova Scotia right there, tall oaf, always dancing around.
The Prime Minister should step down. What does that say about the Prime Minister's leadership?
Look, I'll speak for myself. I'm a member of his cabinet. Obviously, we support him. I think the work that we're trying to do to help Canadians is really the main focus right now. We're up against somebody who's campaigning on promises to deny access to free birth control for women, who won't even get a security clearance to look into allegations about his own caucus members being engaged in foreign interference, who's opposing policies that are going to help build more homes. I know which side I'm on.
I can assure my honourable colleague that we understand the challenges that families are experiencing in our communities, but those families are right to ask who is actually fighting for them. The seniors who have earned their pensions, not just but their premiums, but with decades of hard work, bad backs, busted joints, are facing an opposition leader who has a history of gutting their pensions. The Conservative Party has members who voted against removing the interest on student loans. And families, if you receive the Canada Child Benefit, know that there is not one Conservative member of Parliament who voted to support you with thousands of dollars every year. Mr. Speaker, there are two choices: a Liberal government who will stand up for families, a Conservative leader who will stand up for himself.
We've got Melanie Jolie. She's a cokehead. I'm positive. Like, just look at those eyes, look at her body language. Person can't be just that stressed.
One thing is clear is I won't tell you, and I will go and have these discussions in cabinet.
India, since coming out with the allegations, RCMP,
Yeah.
have you seen any change in tone from India?
And what do you think of the way that they've responded to the U.S. allegations in comparison to the Canadian allegations?
So when it comes to India, of course, I've been in contact with my counterpart, and we stand by our allegations. And not only that, I think the RCMP did an important, an extraordinary measure by explaining to the public how much the Indian agents here in Canada were involved in the harassment, in the intimidation, in the extortion, and potentially also killing of Canadians. And that's why we expulse Indian diplomats. And my job is to continue to engage India while making sure that they're held to account, and I'll continue to do that.
The allegations, RCMP.
Speaker, of course I will. As I mentioned since the beginning, we have 3 priorities. First, seek the truth. Second, make sure that we protect Canadians. And thirdly, defend Canada's sovereignty. Based on information provided by the RCMP, we asked India to lift the diplomatic immunity on 6 of their diplomats.
There's other pieces of filth in Trudeau's cabinet besides that. Immigration minister, total goof. Hard to look at, harder to listen to.
And not do it sort of in hushed tones and.
Qu'est-ce que vous pensez de leur démarche? Est-ce que ça? How does he come back to lead a united caucus if that many?
Well, I think what you'll see is that the vast majority of caucus and cabinet, the entirety of cabinet's behind him.
Mr. Speaker, is that it's garbage to focus on anything other than the circus clown that he's supporting.
There's so many guys. Yahara Sachs, mental health, addictions. This woman is on edge, man.
I have absolute confidence in the Prime Minister.
What do you think of those MPs that are signing this letter and not coming out?
I'm focused on the work that we need to do for
But does that bother you?
We got John Eves Duclos. I think he's Procurement Services Minister. This guy's a pedo, like I'm guessing.
Insult to all Francophone members in this House, including Conservative members. Is the member trying to tell me that I don't have a right to speak French in this House?
Well, that's for the Bloc to answer. We are certainly focused on making the government work for Canadians. That's exactly what people expect, and that's what we are going to keep doing.
He's such a creep. So weird. Anyhow, guys, this is what we've got going on behind us. I see a person here coming up too. Gonna have a quick chat with my man Willie. He's grooving out to some tunes, I think. Big storm here yesterday. It's calmed down. What's up, Willie? That was a crazy day of wind, man.
Lucky the power didn't go out.
I can't believe the power didn't go out.
Oh, we were very lucky.
Do you mind being on camera?
Oh, I don't really like it.
No. Okay, well, we won't bother with that too much. No. It's all right, man. It's good to see you here. Drop in and see me.
All right.
Yeah, who are the other pieces of shit in the Trudeau dirty, filthy, rotten cabinet? Got Karina Gould. She's such a troll, guys. Like, lies right to your face every day, in question period, thinks nothing of it.
Give the documents over to the House of Commons as it's been voted.
So as I have been very clear, the government has provided thousands of pages of documents. They comply with the charter requirements of the government. The Conservatives are pursuing, their own political partisan vendetta. And as we've heard from expert after expert, including the law clerk yesterday, who raised the fact that he shared the concerns raised by the RCMP and the Auditor General by what the Conservatives are doing right now. So, we will continue to stand up for the rights of Canadians, respect due process of the police, and ensure that this, place remains one where democracy is upheld despite what the Conservatives are doing.
Disclosure and option. Every Canadian is wondering, what is it that he is trying to hide, or what is it that he is trying to protect? It's an easy thing to do. All the other leaders in this place have done it. Why won't the leader of the opposition get his security clearance? Good question.
We got our piece of shit, Chrystia Freeland.
My friends, a real change.
Wiggle and squirm as you might, it is really hard to put lipstick on a pig.
Like, not only is she a hideous little pig, she's arrogant. Like, in doing so, it would be okay if some of these people had humility. They don't.
The Conservatives talk about the PBO because just a few weeks ago, the PBO did a report on the sustainability of the federal finances. And I'm going to quote what the PBO said, quote, "Current fiscal policy at the federal level is sustainable over the long term. In fact, according to the PBO, the federal government could even, quote, permanently increase spending by 1.5% of GDP. The only fiscal threat to Canada is Conservatives, who would cut health care, child care, national school fees."
No humility to be found. Just investing in Canadians. It's like a bunch of losers. We got little FPC, little rabid Chihuahua, who's really hungry in this video. He's just looking to get something to eat, I guess.
We're here to deliver for Canadians, so that's why. So it was a very good meeting.
Do you think your caucus is unified right now?
We'll have a discussion with our folks tomorrow, but like I said, today was a very good meeting. I know you're all here and wondering, but that was a very good meeting. We have a lot of things to deliver, and that's why I was rushing. I was just grabbing lunch.
Little weasel. In here. Come and visit Guysborough. I'm all Guysborough today. This is a Guysborough shirt from 1982 when they did really well in the midget championships. This is a hat promoting Guysborough. Come and check us out here in Canada's Ocean Playground. Look at where I'm walking, guys. You saw how far this was from my house. I myself, I live solo. Like I have most of my life. I had a very serious head injury when I was a kid. They say it made me weird. I wasn't supposed to survive, but I did. And then after a couple of years, I stopped shaking because my brain was screwed up. I used to shake on my right side. It was the left side of my brain that got hurt in a couple of spots, front and back. But we made it, and we made it home. I bought the house that I live in, like outright. I got lucky on a house deal in Halifax, and was able to leave my career, which I hated. I got bullied out of that place. And rest assured, the people that bullied me out of there, I'm coming back for you. I'm gonna fuck you up. But you know what they say about revenge. It's a dish best served cold. Those mofos are gonna get a real cold dish. I'm relentless. Again, I fly solo. Some of you people that say you're family folk will be doing the same. I'm getting you back. I'm gonna fuck you up. You think you're getting away with that? You won't. Look at that. We got a Canadian loon right here. Oh, it took a dive. It's hiding on us. Canadian loony. You know what the job of the loon is in the community, right? It's to warn the others when something of threat has made itself present. That's what my job is. I'm just telling Canadians what I see, man, and to be aware that there is a threat in our area. And it's this federal government. Trudeau and the ministers that we've been discussing. I should take us right down to the point, but we've got to save something for another day. Look at this. That's it, guys. This is Guysborough. Come and check it out. It's as pretty as it is here, the people are even nicer. And, well, I'm not gonna lie, I'm pretty happy to be back. Check this out. Beauty abound. Like, whew, my goodness. And right over here too. Just behind me again. Ain't it something?
Look, I was flabbergasted to hear the leader of the opposition's answer today, the most immature answer on immigration that I've ever heard. He's late to the game. He's so late to the game on this, he hasn't even come up with a slogan yet. So when he comes up with a slogan, perhaps we'll take the chance to respond. But what we propose is a plan for controlled migration. We're proud of it. It serves Canadians well.
The honourable member from Calgary-Shepherd.
Thank you, Speaker. It's rich coming from that particular minister who called 24 Liberal MPs garbage because they're looking after their own careers and worried they're not going to make it. They're not going to be here after the next election because their own constituents are going to send them to the unemployment line. Now, this Prime Minister is reckless, and he even said it himself. He didn't get it right. He said it during his own press conference. He didn't get it right on immigration. He didn't get it right on housing. He can't get it right on the carbon tax. So, will the Prime Minister just admit that his flip-flop has destroyed the immigration system and accept his own personal failure?
The Honourable Minister for Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship.
What I said, Mr. Speaker, is that it's garbage to focus on anything other than the circus clown that he's supporting.
Strains on our healthcare system, food banks, not to mention some cracks in our security screening processes. Was this an admission of dropping the ball on this file?
You know, Jamie, the Prime Minister put me in that position to make a few things change. I think we realized...
Everyone has an opinion about Canadian federal politics.
Oh, yeah.
Hey gang, what's up? Just Aaron right here, Canadian Looney. So we have our minister here, Mark Miller. He's the Minister of Immigration. This is for you, Mr. Pickles. This asshole is putting Canada under the gun of immigration. He's not good at his job. He's not good at talking. He's not good to look at. What is he worth? He's going under the bus. Trudeau is going to toss this red-headed brother under the bus. Like, he's a mess. Doesn't know how to speak. Just a loser. Check him out. This is what we have in Trudeau's cabinet. A bum minister like Mark Miller.
Immigration Minister, Mark Miller, we appreciate your time, Minister. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you, Jamie.
And you even said when you took over the file in July of last year that things did get out of control. And I'm curious, is yesterday's reduction kind of an admission that your predecessor and the Prime Minister's policies were not executed properly?
Well, bring out the gimp. I think the gimp's sleeping. Well, I guess you just have to go wake him up now, won't you?
My question, and a question that Canadians from the queer community want to know, is where was that member, who is a member of the queer community, when it came to 50% of kids living in the street who are LGBT because their straight parents kicked them out? Where's that member when Blaine Higgs went after trans kids in New Brunswick? Where's that member when Danielle Smith is saying she's going to take the rights of trans kids away? Where's that member when Scott Moe is focusing on bathrooms in a Saskatchewan election? He will not show up.
Hey gang, what's up? Just Aaron right here, Canadian Looney. We have issues in Canada, right? Unless you're completely head in the sand, be aware of this. Everyone has an opinion about Canadian federal politics. Oh yeah.
After 9 years of NDP Liberals, time is up for the Prime Minister's endless chaos and failures. And let's use his own words on immigration just from last year to prove it. Quote, as our government is raising immigration levels to the highest levels that have ever been, people are like, we're already facing challenges in housing. Where are we going to house these 500,000 people per year? And now, a year too late, the Prime Minister made an announcement that is an admission of a massive failure of his record after 9 years. Will the Prime Minister admit that his flip-flop has caused lasting damage to Canada's housing market, healthcare and jobs?
The Honourable Minister for Employment and Workforce Development.
Mr. Speaker, we've answered that question already this week. My question, and a question that Canadians from the queer community want to know, is where was that member, who is a member of the queer community, when it came to 50% of kids living in the street who are LGBT because their straight parents kicked them out? Where's that member when Blaine Higgs went after trans kids in New Brunswick? Where's that member when Danielle Smith is saying she's going to take the rights of trans kids away? Where's that member when Scott Moe is focusing on bathrooms in a Saskatchewan election? He will not show up. At Canadian Pride events, when we talk about trans issues, he should be ashamed. He is not defending the queer community of Canada.
The Honourable Member from Stormont Dundas, South Glengarry.
I'm proud of who I am and proud of my integrity when that minister can't even name the other Randy. So I'm not going to take any lectures from that guy, Mr. Speaker. But here's what the Prime Minister said just last year about the immigration system. Quote, there are a lot of pressures on our system, increasing the immigration levels. Interestingly, though, it'll take some pressure off the system. They have absolutely failed and they broke our immigration system. They've doubled housing costs and they did a massive flip-flop yesterday that they're embarrassed to even talk about. After 9 years, why can't we just have a carbon tax election to boot that member and this government out of here?
The Honourable Member for Employment and Workforce Development.
Where's that member's voice and the members of the Conservatives when queer refugees are struggling to come to the country? I tell you, they are nowhere to be found. Where is that member sticking up for trans kids when we have Canadian Pride caucus meetings? Not to be found. Neither is the MP for Thornhill. Mr. Speaker, they try to wrap themselves in the rainbow flag when it's convenient to get Conservative votes. They are simply not truthful with Canadians. They are not truthful with the queer community. Do you hear the heckling, Mr. Speaker? They can't handle it when we punch. They can't handle it when we stick up for the queer community. They do not stick up for the 2S LGBT community. We do. We're Liberals. We're the government. We've got kids' backs.
Let's see what happens moving forward. Canadians want an election. 70% of us, they say, do. Anyways, that's what the polls say. My name's Aaron. This is Canadian Looney. Like, subscribe, share, get notified, all those fun things. We're covering Canadian federal politics, showing you what we're learning every day. That's it. Like, subscribe, share, get notified, all those fun things. Please leave a comment. Love the comments. Thanks for watching this video. We'll check you out in the next one. Everyone has an opinion about Canadian federal politics. Oh yeah. Hey gang, what's up? Just Aaron right here, Canadian Looney. How y'all doing? In today's episode, we're going to have Larry Brock explaining how Bill C-63 will affect Canadians. This bill has been put forward by Attorney General Arif Virani, and it is trouble, guys. It's a sinister bill put up by a classless minister, at least. Larry Brock is going to give his explanation of why it's not a good idea for Canadians, and we're going to learn from Larry. There is a lot to learn from Mr. Brock. He is a sharp, sharp man. Let's take a listen to Larry Brock explaining all about Bill C-63. It is interesting. Let's take a listen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I proudly rise in opposition today to Bill C-63. Canadians, I know it's a shock to the member opposite. Canadians take pride, Mr. Speaker, in living in a nation where justice prevails, freedoms are upheld, and our most vulnerable, especially our children, are protected. Yet today, after 9 years of this failed government, crime is rising, leaving families across the country concerned for the safety of their loved ones, both on the streets and online. Online criminal activity continues to surge, but the Liberals' response has been to push censorship bills that force Canadians into a false choice between their safety and free expression. Instead of addressing the real issues, this Liberal legislation silences Canadians under the guise of security, creating bloated bureaucracies led by the Prime Minister's hand-picked allies. Canadians are bearing the brunt of this government's failures. Bill C-63 introduces a dangerous new provision, an offence motivated by hatred, which could impose a life sentence for even minor infractions under any act of Parliament. This broad, unchecked provision opens the door to the possibility, Mr. Speaker, that mere words alone could lead to life imprisonment. While the government claims that a serious underlying act must occur for this punishment to apply, that is simply not reflected in the text of the bill. Section 320 of the Criminal Code would be amended to state, quote, "Everyone who commits an offence under this Act or any other Act of Parliament is guilty of an indictable offence and liable to imprisonment for life," end of quotes. Laws to address the issues we're witnessing have been in place for decades, and the Supreme Court has ruled on them multiple times. We don't need new laws to govern hate speech. This government needs to grow a backbone and enforce the laws as they stand. Earlier this year at the Justice Committee, the Justice Minister openly admitted that Bill C-63's new hate crime offence could apply to any offence, as long as it's hate motivated. He said the bill's sentencing range covers everything from minor to serious crimes, but that judges, handpicked by this government, will make sure minor offenses don't receive harsh sentences. However, by leaving this to the courts, this government is being reckless. We can't rely on vague promises that the judiciary will fix a poorly drafted bill. Parliament needs to clearly define when a life sentence should apply, not hand over broad and unchecked power. This bill risks extreme punishments for minor infractions. As stated by a political commentator, the Liberals are using the guillotine of speech violations, and on the other hand, house arrest for career criminals roaming the streets exploiting a broken bail system. Only in Canada would that bizarre statement have application. Widespread concern from all sides of the political spectrum have been raised about Bill C-63's introduction of a so-called hate crime peace bond, with many labeling it as a pre-crime measure for speech. The problem lies in the fact that this provision would extend the power to issue peace bonds based solely on speech-related offenses, without clearly defining what constitutes such crimes or ensuring that they meet the criminal standard for hate. While the Liberals focus on banning opinions that challenge the Prime Minister's ideology, Conservatives are dedicated to keeping Canadians safe, both online and offline, while also at the same point upholding and defending their civil liberties, a concept that's completely unknown to this government. This is why my colleague, the member for Calgary Nose Hill, introduced Bill C-412. Bill C-412 is designed to protect Canadians online through three key areas: protection from online criminal harassment, safeguarding our children, and ensuring user privacy. C-412 aims to empower victims of online criminal harassment who currently have limited options for quickly and permanently ending their harassment. This legislation would allow victims to apply to a judge to identify their harasser, end the harassment, and then impose conditions to stop it as deemed appropriate by a court. It also provides legal clarity regarding when online operators, such as social media platforms, must disclose the identity of an alleged abuser. Additionally, the legislation introduces an aggravating factor for perpetrators who repeatedly send harassment anonymously using multiple burner accounts. These measures are designed to streamline the process for victims to interact with law enforcement and receive effective protections, ultimately enabling law enforcement to de-escalate violence in a timely manner. In contrast, the Liberals' Bill C-63 contains no such provisions, representing a significant flaw for a bill that purports to protect Canadians from online harm. Online harassment is widespread and often anonymous, yet our current laws are outdated, and Bill C-63 fails to provide on this front. In addition, Bill C-63 fails our children by delaying protections and relying on an unclear regulatory process. In contrast, Bill C-412 takes proactive measures by imposing a clear duty of care on online operators. The bill seeks to establish a novel set of checks and balances between the government, operators, and parents to keep children safe online. Under C-412, existing government regulators, law enforcement, and the judiciary will ensure operators follow their duty of care to keep kids safe online. Operators would be formally required to ensure they keep kids safe under a clear set of guidelines. Parents then would have all the tools needed to understand what their kids are doing online and then make informed decisions about what types of permissions to give them for their online use. It provides parents with tools to protect their children online through non-invasive age verification methods and enforces these protections with steep penalties for non-compliance. Bill C-412 specifically safeguards children against physical harm, bullying, sexual violence, and harmful online content. C-412 offers a balanced solution that emphasizes privacy, preserving age verification methods, while explicitly prohibiting the use of digital IDs. Many Canadians are concerned about privacy and the misuse of digital IDs. Bill C-412 ensures that digital identifiers cannot be used for age verification. Meanwhile, Bill C-63 leaves privacy concerns unaddressed and lacks clear prohibitions against the misuse of digital IDs. Bill C-63's vague regulatory framework allows for excessive bureaucratic oversight, creating opportunities for tech lobbyists to manipulate the process behind closed doors. Instead of providing immediate protections, it pushes key decisions into an opaque regulatory future, prioritizing the interests of big tech over the safety and well-being of Canadian families.
So
by failing to effectively
interrupt Larry Brock, imagine that. We are going to interrupt Larry Brock. We've got something better. We'll watch a few minutes of this and then we'll get into the next community video. But this chick, Michelle Ferrari, is solid. Big time.
Hey everyone, Michelle Ferrari here, Member of Parliament for... Oh, here we go. Okay, let's try this again. Hey everyone, Michelle Ferrari here, Member of Parliament for Peterborough-Kawartha in my Ottawa office on Parliament Hill, and lots of news circulating today, about what is happening here on Parliament Hill. And if you've been following this situation, you know that sort of one by one Liberal MPs are coming out in revolt against the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau. And in particular, Sean Casey, a Liberal MP from PEI, started this letter, and now there's, rumors that it is around 40 MPs who have signed this, who are calling for the Prime Minister's resignation. And, as we heard yesterday in question period, Pierre Poilievre called out the fact that in the Liberal caucus, you need permission. You need permission to speak at the mic, and from the Prime Minister himself. And so what the point of this video, I want to talk about a few things. And what the Liberal MPs are experiencing is what Canadians have been experiencing for the last 9, almost 10 years. So what they're saying, like 2 years ago, there is reports that the Liberals brought up at their, I believe it was St. Andrew's caucus retreat that cost taxpayers lots of money. They went and said, we're concerned about the direction of leadership. We're concerned about the Prime Minister. And they were, reassured that no, I'm listening to you. We're going to change course. We're going to get back on track. And 2 years later, nothing's changed. If not, it is worse, right? So housing has doubled. Food bank usage is at all-time highs. Children are literally one of the most vulnerable groups. 30% of food bank users are children. Mental health is at an ultimate decline. 22 people a day are dying from opioids. The government is handing out deadly drugs instead of treating addiction and having a compassionate response. Our GDP is the lowest it's been. It's just one thing after another of failed policy. And so now the Liberal MPs are saying, hey, this guy doesn't listen. This guy doesn't listen to us. So if he doesn't listen to his own MPs, do you think he's going to listen to Canadians? No. And most of you already know this. Most of you have been screaming this. It's like, those dreams where you scream in the forest, but you have no voice. But it's starting to really bubble up. And obviously a lot of that has to do with the great work of Pierre Poilievre and our team, frankly, calling out.
The honourable member is quite right. She'll be able to continue her comments, and she'll have about 13 minutes and 40 seconds left. Statements by members. Déclaration de député. L'honorable député, the honourable member from Yukon.
Mr. Speaker, World Polio Day reminds us that polio is still a threat for too many in this world. But thanks to champions like Rotary International, we remain close to our goals of eradicating polio through immunization. Polio vaccinators have reached over 2.5 billion children, bringing hope and health to countless families. At the recent Rotary International Conference in Toronto, our government announced $151 million to support the Global Polio Eradication Initiative, funding which will vaccinate over 370 million children annually, preventing 600,000 cases of paralysis and death. While we celebrate a 99.9% success rate, the final 0.1% remains our toughest challenge. polio is still endemic in some countries and outbreaks threaten us, particularly in regions affected by war. The continued circulation of polio in this world highlights a crucial truth. Peace is essential for health. As we observe World Polio Day, let's renew our shared commitment to ensure no child lives in fear of this disease.
The Honourable Member for Bellechasse, Les Etchemins-Lévis. Congratulations to the Arche Le Printemps de Saint-Malachie on its 50th anniversary and to Service d'Entraide de Pinton for its 35th anniversary. For 5 decades, the Arche Le Printemps has provided a warm, inclusive environment for people with intellectual disabilities, in a place where friendship and respect reign supreme. For its part, the Service d'Entraide de Pinton has played an essential role in our community for 35 years, providing support, comfort, and solidarity to all those in need. These anniversaries are an opportunity to pay tribute to the employees, volunteers, and partners who have helped make these organizations pillars of our community. Thanks to their commitment and dedication, the Arche and the Service d'Entraide continue to better the lives of so many families and champion hope across the board. We wish you continued success in your missions for many years to come. May you continue with the same passion. Bravo, and thank you for your invaluable impact on our residents. We wish you all the best, and thank you, Mr. Speaker.
L'honorable député de Sherbrooke.
The Honourable Member for Sherbrooke. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On Sunday, October 2024, was a day of great joy and gratitude. Thousands of people gathered in St. Peter's Square in Rome for the canonization of Sister Marie-Léonie by Pope Francis I. In officially declaring Sister Marie-Léonie a saint, the Church has recognized her humility and service to others. Sister Marie-Léonie was born in Montérégie and founded the Congrégation des Petites Sœurs de la Sainte Famille and moved to Sherbrooke. The congregation in Sherbrooke continues to embody the values held dearly by Sister Marie-Léonie. The congregation is also made up of women dedicated to their mission. Saint Marie-Léonie's legacy marks the power of humility and kindness in building peace. May she inspire us all.
The Honourable Member from Nanaimo, Ladysmith.
Mr. Speaker, the federal government's Welcoming Francophone Communities initiative recognizes communities outside Quebec that are going above and beyond to help French-speaking newcomers settle and build their new lives in Canada. My community of Nanaimo on central Vancouver Island has been recognized as one of 2 welcoming Francophone communities in the province of British Columbia, thanks to the ongoing hard work and dedication of l'Association des Francophones de Nanaimo. Je suis tellement fière d'être là.
I'm so proud to be representing this community in Parliament. All are welcome here, and we all work together to build a richer and more inclusive future. I wish to thank the Association des Francophones de Nanaimo for their dedication, passion, and profound contribution to making Nanaimo even more welcoming and diverse. Congratulations to all. Thank you. I'd like to commend the Honourable Member for her French. The Honourable Member for Glengarry Prescott Russell. Mr. Speaker, before starting, I just wanted to verify with the official opposition if I can speak French without someone telling me to speak English. Yesterday, the Minister of Public Service and Procurement was told in this very House to answer a question in English by a Conservative Member of Parliament, the member for Brantford-Brant. I would like to remind the House that this riding includes 4,000 Franco-Ontarians. About a year ago, the Minister of Heritage was asked by the Conservative member for Lethbridge to answer a question in French in committee. And as time goes by, more and more Conservatives are telling us to answer questions in English. It's almost like a slogan at this point. It feels like the culture of speak white is rampant across conservatism, and the leader of the Conservative Party or conservative Francophones have not denounced this. In this side of the House, we will always defend official languages. When Francophone Conservative MPs finally, will Conservative Francophone MPs finally have the gall to denounce this, or will they continue in this direction?
Mr. Speaker, as you know, I have a private member's bill to make December Christian Heritage Month. Christians make up over half the population of Canada. Many other major religions have a Heritage Month, and it helps us to understand the different faiths and their practices and to promote tolerance in our land of religious freedom. Well, many people across our nation have been inspired to approach their mayor and councils to proclaim December as Christian Heritage Month. 18 cities and areas have proclaimed it so far. Thank you to Rideau Lakes, Saskatoon, Brampton, Whistler, Welland, Ajax, Clarington, Pickering, Durham, Waynfleet, Caledon, Aurora, Milton, Prince George, and Orillia. If you would like to have your area make this proclamation, my office is happy to help. Together, we can proclaim Christian Heritage Month across the nation.
The honourable member from Winnipeg South.
Mr. Speaker, over the past year, we have discovered that several countries, including China, Iran, Russia, and India, have been engaging in foreign interference in Canada. The Justice Hogue inquiry has made it clear that every member of this House has a responsibility to combat foreign interference. It's time for all political party leaders to put country before party and be vigilant in protecting democracy and the values we hold dear. But, Mr. Speaker, the leader of the Conservative Party is deliberately choosing to stay in the dark and is refusing to take the necessary security briefing. It's high time for him to step up, Mr. Speaker, so let me put this in simple terms he will understand. Get the clearance, get the briefing, protect the country.
The honourable member from Ottawa Centre.
Well, thank you very much, Speaker. Over the last few weeks, my constituents have been asking me why the leader of the opposition would not get a security clearance. And I mean, it's a really legitimate question. And I do want to give the leader of the opposition a benefit of a doubt, but he's just running out of excuses. So what I thought is, I look at what the national security experts are saying, because they're the best people to know as to what should happen in this case. And, you know, Ward Alcock, who's the former CSIS director, said, made it really clear that having a chief of staff with clearance is just not enough. Similarly, Richard Fadden, who's another former CSIS director, also said that being a former Privy Councillor doesn't give you access to classified information. In order for us to protect the national security interests of the country, in order for the leader of the opposition to know what's happening in his own party, it is important that he get the clearance, take the briefing, and protect the country. It's that simple.
The honourable member from Kenora.
Across Northern Ontario, our healthcare system is in a crisis. Many are without a family doctor. Emergency rooms have been forced to close, and the great healthcare professionals we do have are burnt out working overtime to try and fill labour gaps. This is caused in part to Canada's red tape and barriers to entry for healthcare workers. Currently, less than half of foreign-trained doctors and nurses are working in their profession, Mr. Speaker, meaning there are 50,000 healthcare professionals who could be working in our hospitals but are unable to do so. And that is why Common Sense Conservatives will bring in a Blue Seal national testing standard. This will ensure foreign-trained professionals can work in their field and take their skills wherever they are needed across the country. And it will include a 60-day standard, Mr. Speaker, so those applying for certification can take a test and receive an answer in a timely fashion. Our healthcare system is in need of support, and only Conservatives will remove the red tape and the barriers so we can bring home doctors and nurses.
L'honorable député, the honourable member from Milton.
Leaders from the Greens, the NDP, the Liberal Party, and the Bloc Québécois have all received a top-level security clearance recently, and that's because they take all the attacks on our democracy by foreign interference seriously, but not the leader of the Conservative Party. Despite CSIS, the RCMP, and the entire security and intelligence apparatus insisting that it's essential for all leaders to get cleared, the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, who's been a member for over 20 years, refuses. The Canadian national security experts who have urged him to get briefed have said that the Conservative leader is playing with Canadians. The member from Carleton is unserious, reckless, arrogant, and unfit to lead Canada. There's a paragraph in the NSICOP report on foreign interference that described India's alleged interference in Conservative Party of Canada leadership races, so perhaps that explains it. His disdain for science and expertise, his contempt for the media, his appreciation for conspiracy theories, and his refusal to get briefed are all emblematic of far-right populist threats that we see from Trump's Republican Party. He should get the clearance, take the briefing, protect the country, but he won't, because he doesn't care about Canada. He's only in politics for himself.
Once again, I'm just going to remind all members not to take the floor now. Again, remind the member from Calgary, Signal Hill, please, to not take the floor unless recognized by the Speaker. The honourable member from Caribou, Prince George.
This NDP Liberal government safe supply experiment has destroyed the very communities it claims to help. This week we heard heartbreaking testimony from Masha Krupp, an Ottawa mother who lost her daughter to overdose and whose son is now addicted to government-funded hydromorphone. She revealed that she has personally witnessed so-called safe supply pills being resold right outside the clinic, at times even to teenagers. The government continues to deny that taxpayer-funded hard drugs are being diverted to children, but now we're hearing reports from Montreal that's saying children as young as 11 are getting hooked on diverted drugs from so-called safe supply clinics. Experts are saying that Quebec may become the new British Columbia, where overdose is a leading cause of death for children aged 10 to 18. Mr. Speaker, only a common-sense Conservative government will ban taxpayer-funded drug handouts, invest in treatment, invest in recovery, and bring our loved ones home.
The honourable member from Prince Albert.
Speaker, after 9 years of NDP Liberals, taxes are up, costs are up, crime is up, time is up. Mr. Speaker, you have ruled the NDP Liberals violated a House order to turn over evidence to the police for a criminal investigation on the latest $400 million scandal. The NDP Liberals' refusal to respect your ruling has paralyzed Parliament, pushed aside our work to address doubling of housing costs, food inflation, crime, and chaos. The Auditor General's investigation found the Liberals' appointees to the SDTC gave nearly $400 million to their own companies, with over 186 conflicts of interest at a time when Canadians can't afford to eat, heat, and house themselves. Mr. Speaker, responsible government is accountable to the people of Canada. We work for the people of Canada. This is a fundamental pillar of our parliamentary system. When will the NDP Liberals end the cover-up, turn over the documents to the police so Parliament can get back to work for working for Canadians? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from London North Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Leader of the Opposition clearly never tires of telling everyone he can that he wants to be Prime Minister of this country. You know what's crucial to being a Prime Minister, first and foremost, Mr. Speaker? Ensuring the country's safety. And one of the ways to ensure the country's safety is to have access to vital information. That access is ensured through a top security clearance. And to get a top security clearance, Mr. Speaker, you have to do background checks. Security agencies carry out background checks on one's family history, credit history, criminal background checks as well. The Leader of the Opposition does not want to do this, and he's never been clear why. He's given many, many excuses, all of which has been debunked, absolutely debunked, by security experts. Former head of CSIS, for example, has come out and made very clear that there's no reason for that. I point to Reg Alcock, for example, Mr. Speaker, and others, former national security advisors to Conservative and Liberal Prime Ministers, Mr. Speaker, like Dick Fadden. Yeah. He's not clear on this at all. What's he holding back? What's he hiding, Mr. Speaker? There.
The honourable member from Port Moody, Coquitlam.
November is Indigenous Disability Awareness Month. Indigenous peoples have rates of disabilities 3 times higher than the average Canadian, and more often without the supports needed. I raise my hands to Indigenous Disability Canada and British Columbia Aboriginal Network on Disability Society, who continue to ask Parliament to raise the profile of Indigenous persons with disabilities and correct this discrimination. In 2017, the United Nations International Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities recommended that Canada officially proclaim and recognize IDAM each year. It is time for the government to do that. November should be the time that Canada officially recognizes and appreciates the achievements of Indigenous peoples with disabilities, highlighting the valuable contribution they bring to community. This year is the year the government can take action and proclaim November as Indigenous Disability Awareness Month.
The honourable member for Laurentides-Labelle. We are so proud to celebrate the 70th anniversary of the Saint Vincent de Paul Conference in Mont-Laurier. For decades, this flagship organization has played a crucial role in the community, providing a second-hand store where clothing, furniture, and household goods are offered at lower cost. It also provides a town hall for seniors and social groups. The organization also offers people in need food vouchers, and that totals $80,000 a year that has been distributed. This community-based organization also organizes weekly soup kitchen dinners. These complete meals help many people fight isolation. I'm grateful to learn I'm grateful for the team of volunteers who work so hard to maintain the social fabric of our community. I commend Claude Ménard and Monique Venn for their 50 years of dedication. Thank you both.
The honourable member from Bow River.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. After 9 years of NDP Liberal taxes up, costs up, crimes up, and time is up for this Prime Minister. This week, members of his own caucus had the courage to stand up and tell the truth. Canadians cannot afford a single day more of this NDP Liberals. My constituents write to me every day in disbelief of the state of Canada after 9 years. Parliament's paralysed, new scandals arise every day, Canadians are paying more for everything. Instead of listening to the brave Core 24, the Prime Minister refuses to check his ego, tells Canadians not to believe their own eyes, and will continue his ideological path to quadruple the carbon tax, raising the cost of gas, groceries, and heating. As winter creeps in, Alberta families will be forced to choose between heat and freezing. So will the Prime Minister stop treating Canadians like garbage and call a carbon tax election, or do the Liberals want the West to freeze in the dark?
The honourable member from Mississauga Lakeshore.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week, the RCMP revealed that agents of the Indian government committed serious crimes on Canadian soil, including murder, extortion, and foreign interference in our democratic process. At a time when the members of this House should be united against these appalling crimes, the Conservative leader's decision to prioritize his campaign over national security sends a message to Canadians that he won't protect them, and tells the rest of the world that under a Conservative government, there won't be any consequences for foreign interference. People are rightly concerned. The NCCOP report earlier this year also alleged that India interfered in a Conservative Party leadership race. The Conservative leader would rather let his party be a target of foreign interference than get his security clearance. That doesn't add up. That certainly lacks common sense that he's so proud of. Why won't he get his clearance? Canadians have a right to know what the Conservative leader is hiding.
Oral questions. Questions orales. L'honorable député.
The honourable member for Bellechasse, Les Etchemins, Lévis. 24 Liberal MPs are asking the Prime Minister to step aside for the same reason, by the way, that Canadians are calling for elections. Cost of living is up, there are long wait lines at food banks, housing is unaffordable, the debt has doubled. But there's something that I don't understand. The people who should be supporting the Prime Minister are dropping him, but the Bloc Québécois persists in maintaining him in power. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has failed. He has failed when it comes to immigration in particular. Will he call elections now?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. One thing is clear. Yes, the Conservative Party has talked a lot about the problems that we're facing in the country right now. The member spoke about the challenges that people are facing. And she speaks about them every day, but where's the plan? They're clear on the first step, but they don't have a plan after that, Mr. Speaker. This is an example of how the Conservative Party is a populist party, a right-wing party. Thank you. The honourable member for Bellechasse, Les Etchemins, Lévis. After 9 years of this Liberal government, the country is in chaos. 2 million Canadians are relying on food banks for food, and everyone is affected by homelessness. And 24 Liberal MPs want the Prime Minister to go. Parliament is paralysed right now because the government refuses to be transparent in another scandal. The Bloc has supported the government 200 times. They need to explain themselves to Quebecers. Is the Prime Minister ready to do the honourable thing and call elections? That's the plan, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, I have a lot of respect for my honourable colleague, and she's right that Canadians are going through a difficult time. But, Mr. Speaker, where was she? Where was she when we voted to support seniors? Where was she and her caucus when we lowered taxes for Canadians? Where was she when we put in place a dental care program for Canadians? Mr. Speaker, I know what that member and all Conservatives did. They voted against. They voted against Canadians. We are there for all Canadians and all Quebecers. The Honourable Member for Bellechasse, Les Etchemins-Lévis. Where were those 24 MPs, Mr. Speaker, when it comes to the rise in the cost of housing, the use of food banks, and, the housing encampments that we're seeing? All of this is the disastrous record of the Liberals supported by the Bloc Québécois. And now the immigration system once again is failing because of Liberal improvisation on that file. This Prime Minister needs to call elections. When is he going to do it? Then I have the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Mr. Speaker, what I'm concerned about is the growing caucus against abortion in the Conservative Party. We've heard from Conservatives who are still in caucus, and we've heard from previous caucus members that it's because of their values. Well, on this side of the House, Mr. Speaker, we will always fight for women's rights like for abortion.
The Honourable Member from Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes.
After 9 years of these NDP Liberals, the cost of housing has doubled, our national debt has doubled, and Canadians can't afford to feed themselves or their families. Now we've learned that there are 24 Liberal MPs who are looking for the Prime Minister to resign. After 9 years of these NDP Liberals, taxes are up, costs are up, crime is up, and time is up for this Prime Minister who can't fix what he's broken in this country while he's dealing with his revolting caucus. So will he stand up today and call a carbon tax election?
The Honourable Minister for Indigenous Services.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And for years we've been hearing rumours about the Conservative Party of Canada's leader, and now it's out in the open. His party is full of people fighting to restrict the freedom of women. The MP for Richmond-Athabasca, former member, acted with his conscience to stand up for women. But why won't the other members of his caucus do the same? In fact, what they're doing, Mr. Speaker, is fraternizing with the lobbyists that want to attack the rights of women across this country.
The Honourable Member from Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes.
Well, did you hear that? It's the sound of desperation from a government that's broken absolutely everything in this country. They broke housing, they broke immigration. Canadians can't afford to eat, heat, or house themselves after 9 years of these failed NDP Liberals. And all Canadians want is to be able to afford a home, to be able to have a home in a good, safe neighborhood where they can retire comfortably. And all they're asking to do is to be able to work hard in exchange for that privilege. It was a promise we made to Canadians, and they broke it. So instead of fighting with his 24 members who want him to resign, why won't he stand up and call a carbon tax election?
The Honourable Minister for Housing, Infrastructure and Communities.
Mr. Speaker, I can assure my honourable colleague that we understand the challenges that families are experiencing in our communities, but those families are right to ask who is actually fighting for them. The seniors who have earned their pensions, not just with their premiums, but with decades of hard work, bad backs, busted joints, are facing an opposition leader who has a history of gutting their pensions. The Conservative Party has members who voted against removing the interest on student loans. And families, if you receive the Canada Child Benefit, know that there is not one Conservative member of Parliament who voted to support you with thousands of dollars every year. Mr. Speaker, there are two choices: a Liberal government who will stand up for families, a Conservative leader who will stand up for himself.
The Honourable Member for Saint-Jean. The federal minister is lowering immigration targets finally, but the new thresholds don't reflect the capacity for welcome in Quebec. After 300, Quebec is going to have to receive over 80,000 new immigrants a year under the new plan. Mr. Speaker, those who know the situation best in Quebec are the political parties in the National Assembly in Quebec, and there's no party that is suggesting more than 80,000 a year. Will the Liberals finally consult the provinces and adjust their immigration thresholds? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Quebec has more power over its immigration system than any other province or territory in the country. because it controls over 50% of immigration for temporary residents. The Liberals have put in place a plan for immigration, and we will move forward.
Excuse me.
The honourable member for Saint-Jean. The new targets don't fix the main issue in Quebec, which is asylum seekers. There are 160,000 just in Quebec, and we continue to welcome more than our fair share. Quebecers can't continue to house, give care to, educate, and teach French to so many new people a year just because the other provinces refuse their fair share. This government has to create the conditions so that every province does their part, but we've seen no progress since the summer. There's no negotiations underway. When will the Liberals finally get to work? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Health. Mr. Speaker, I work with Quebec all the time. Immigration is necessary to the growth of our economy and to strengthening our communities. Canadians want a solid and durable immigration system that will allow Canada and everyone who lives in Canada to succeed. That's exactly what we've done with our announcement yesterday. We are reducing the number of temporary and permanent residents over the short term to relieve pressure on housing and infrastructure. The Honourable Member for New Westminster Burnaby.
5 million Canadians are left stranded without the health care they need. This is bringing more people into our already overcrowded hospitals for issues that could have been caught earlier and treated earlier. Our health care continues to be in crisis under the Liberals. And the Conservatives want Canadians to pay to get the care they need so that CEOs can increase their profits. People deserve quality health care without having to pull out their credit cards. Why are the Liberals failing to fix our health care system and forcing people to scramble for the health care they need?
That's right.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Health.
Thank you, Speaker. On this side of the House, we will always stand for a publicly funded healthcare system. And that's why we're making unprecedented investment in our system, working with our provinces and territories. Over $200 billion over 10 years. We've never seen that kind of investment. Not to mention investments in dental care, investment in farmer care. These are the kind of things that we're doing, building a healthcare system post-pandemic so that no Canadian is left behind and they have access to good publicly funded healthcare system.
The Honourable Member from Winnipeg Centre.
Mr. Speaker, while the Liberals talk about abortion as a right but deny access to that right, Conservatives are actively voting for legislation to end safe, trauma-informed abortion care. You can just ask their former caucus members who says anti-choice MPs are calling the shots. Whether you need heart surgery, a knee surgery, or an abortion, people have a right to access public health care. Will the federal government protect access to abortion care by enforcing the Canada Health Act and save our public health care system?
The Honourable Minister for Indigenous Services.
Mr. Speaker, this morning I woke up and I read the most disturbing article. It was an interview, actually, with the former Member of Parliament with the Conservatives, now Member of Parliament for Richmond Athabasca, and he said that he left the party in part because his conscience couldn't stand for the attack on women's rights and freedoms that embeds inroads that anti-abortionists have made with the Conservative Party. And you know what was so upsetting, Mr. Speaker? Not that he talked about that, but that he also alleged the way that they're trying to hide their real selves. Mr. Speaker, will that leader stand up and stand firmly with the rights of women in this country?
The Honourable Member from Stormont-Tongue, South Glengarry.
After 9 years of NDP Liberals, time is up for the Prime Minister's endless chaos and failures. And let's use his own words on immigration just from last year to prove it. Quote, as our government is raising immigration levels to the highest levels that have ever been, people are like, we're already facing challenges in housing. Where are we going to house these 500,000 people per year? And now, a year too late, the Prime Minister made an announcement that is an admission of a massive failure of his record after 9 years. Will the Prime Minister admit that his flip-flop has caused lasting damage to Canada's housing market, healthcare and jobs?
The Honourable Minister for Employment and Workforce Development.
Mr. Speaker, we've answered that question already this week. My question, and a question that Canadians from the queer community want to know, is where was that member, who is a member of the queer community, when it came to 50% of kids living in the street who are LGBT because their straight parents kicked them out? Where's that member when Blaine Higgs went after trans kids in New Brunswick? Where's that member when Danielle Smith is saying she's going to take the rights of trans kids away? Where's that member when Scott Moe is focusing on bathrooms in a Saskatchewan election? He will not show up at Canadian Pride events when we talk about trans issues. He should be ashamed. He is not defending the queer community of Canada.
The honourable member from Stormont Dundas, South Glengarry.
I'm proud of who I am and proud of my integrity when that minister can't even name the other Randy. So I'm not going to take any lectures from that guy, Mr. Speaker. But here's what the Prime Minister said just last year about the immigration system. Quote, there are a lot of pressures on our system, increasing the immigration levels. Interestingly, though, it'll take some pressure off the system. They have absolutely failed, and they broke our immigration system. They've doubled housing costs, and they did a massive flip-flop yesterday that they're embarrassed to even talk about. After 9 years, why can't we just have a carbon tax election to boot that member in this government out of here?
The honourable member for Employment and Workforce Development.
Where's that member's voice and the members of the Conservatives when queer refugees are struggling to come to the country? I'll tell you, they are nowhere to be found. Where is that member sticking up for trans kids when we have Canadian Pride caucus meetings? Not to be found. Neither is the MP for Thornhill. Mr. Speaker, they try to wrap themselves in the rainbow flag when it's convenient to get Conservative votes. They are simply not truthful with Canadians. They are not truthful with the queer community. Do you hear the heckling, Mr. Speaker? They can't handle it when we punch. They can't handle it when we stick up for the queer community. They do not stick up for the 2S LGBT community. We do. We're Liberals. We're the government. We've got kids' backs.
We've got kids' backs.
Colleagues.
What?
Thank you. Thank you. The honourable member. The honourable. Colleagues. The honourable member from Calgary, Nose Hill.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the reality is that it was this government who fought tooth and nail for an extension of the Rainbow Railroad refugee program that was started under the former Harper Conservative government, and all the while they allowed countless people who are in upstate New York to illegally cross the border. That is the record of this government's broken immigration system. And if he wants to talk about queer youth or any Canadian, the reality is that this government's inflationary crisis is what is putting people out on the streets. They've broken Canada's immigration system. Will they allow for a carbon tax election to allow Conservatives to fix their mess?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Health.
Speaker, immigration is key to economic growth of Canada. This country is full of incredible story of immigrants. One speaking right now of a country that has welcomed people from around the world. But the government has always taken a very responsible approach to immigration to make sure that Canada continues to grow. And that's exactly the kind of responsible approach we're demonstrating. The work we did to bring immigrants so that we can keep Canada moving forward during the pandemic, and the work we're doing now so that we can keep up with pace of Canadian population growth, housing we need, and the infrastructure Canadians deserve.
The honourable member from Calgary, Nose Hill.
A responsible approach to immigration. The former immigration minister bragged about increasing international student permits from about 400,000 to 500,000, knowing that shady universities were abusing these students and that these students were living under bridges in Toronto. That's the record of this government. This government, their responsible approach the member talks about, they dropped security clearance certificates from their own background checks for temporary residences. There's nothing responsible about this government. Will they allow for a carbon tax election so that Conservatives can fix Canada's broken immigration system?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Health.
Well, it's always rich to hear from Conservatives when they talk about fake colleges. I hope the member opposite is calling her Premier Danielle Smith to make sure that those fake colleges colleges are not getting credentials. Or I hope the Ontario members are calling Doug Ford to let them know that they should not be accrediting fake colleges. On this side of the House, Speaker, we will always make sure that we are taking a responsible approach. Immigration is important for Canada. We did so during the pandemic, and moving forward, we're making sure that we make the readjustment necessary so that Canadian population and economy grows at a responsible path.
The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. Mr. Speaker, I have the Prime Minister's immigration plan in front of me, the one he submitted yesterday to the House Commons. What's inside of it? Nothing. A white page. After 9 years, the Prime Minister hasn't only broken the immigration system, he forgot his plan, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister's regrets are not credible, no more than his improvised, photocopied, back-of-a-napkin plan. Will the Prime Minister admit that he's pushed the immigration system to a breaking point, causing long-term damage to the housing market, to health care, and to jobs in Canada? Before I ask the Parliamentary Secretary to answer, I would just like to give a warning to all members to please avoid using props and papers that fall out of books. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Health. Mr. Speaker, the new plan is a transition plan that directly meets the changing needs of our country. That's what Canadians want, and that's what they've asked us to do. These actions are necessary to increase our prosperity and support new arrivals and make sure that they can succeed as well. The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. Mr. Speaker, what do you call somebody who sets a house on fire, who watches it burn, and then when there's nothing left but the ashes, then calls the firefighters? Is that a hero or a pyromaniac? Well, Mr. Speaker, this is exactly what the Prime Minister's done with the support of the Bloc Québécois in immigration. He invited the world to come to Canada. He saw the cost of housing double. The cost of food is up, and when he saw the damage he caused, he said that he regrets it. Too little, too late, not credible. When will he call elections so that we can fix everything that he's broken? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Health. Mr. Speaker, after the pandemic, we increased immigration levels to allow our economy and our businesses to succeed. Our post-pandemic measures reflected what Canada needed at the time. The new plan reflects what Canada needs today by recognizing demographic changes, and we will continue to support economic growth over the long term. The Honourable Member for Laurentides-Labelle. Quebecers are very worried by the poor conditions and the poor education at Bedford School in Montreal. We know we need to do more to promote secularism in our schools, but when we want to do more, the federal government wants to do less. We've seen that Bill 21 isn't enough, but Ottawa wants to fight it. Bill 21 protects the right of children to have public secular education. After the Bedford School case, does the federal government finally understand that attacking Bill 21 means attacking the rights of children? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The first thing that we need to remind those listening to us today of is that respecting the dignity and the safety of children is the responsibility of all and our first priority. It's the government of Quebec that is responsible for education in Quebec. The Honourable Member for Laurentides-Labelle. What we saw at the Bedford School is adults who were going against secularism in our schools by giving priority to their own values to the detriment of schools. The priority in schools, it's not adults, it's kids. And attacking Bill 21 is doing the opposite of that. Bill 21 in Clause 4 protects the right of everyone to receive secular public services. Bill 21 protects the right of children to get secular public education. And that is what the Liberals are attacking. Do they not realize what they're doing? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister responsible for families and children. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I agree with my colleague across the way that school is a place where children must be able to learn and grow and stimulate their critical thinking skills. And what's unacceptable is that there are children in Quebec who have been treated in the way that things seem to have happened at Bedford School. We've also noted that it's the responsibility and the jurisdiction of the government of Quebec to deal with this problem. Thank you.
The honourable member from Kelowna Lake Country.
Mr. Speaker, taxes are up, costs are up, crime is up, and time is up. This Prime Minister has destroyed our immigration system through his and his ministers' incompetence. He can't fix what he broke on immigration, housing, or anything else because he's busy fighting his
We got a Canadian loan about Canadian federal right here. Oh, it took a dive. Hey gang, just Aaron right here, Canadian Looney. We're gonna go for a walk, show you how beautiful this place is, and also have a discussion about this corrupt, very dirty Trudeau cabinet. We're gonna take a look at not all, but most of the ministers. We've got a bunch of losers like Sean Fraser. There's a bully from Nova Scotia right there, tall oaf, always dancing around.
The Minister should step down. What does that say about the Prime Minister's leadership?
Look, I'll speak for myself. I'm a member of his cabinet. Obviously, we support him. I think the work that we're trying to do to help Canadians is really the main focus right now. We're up against somebody who's campaigning on promises to deny access to free birth control for women, who won't even get a security clearance to look into allegations about his own caucus members being engaged in foreign interference, who's opposing policies that are going to help build more homes. I know which side I'm on.
I can assure my honourable colleague that we understand the challenges that families are experiencing in our communities, but those families are right to ask who is actually fighting for them. The seniors who have earned their pensions, not just with their premiums, but with decades of hard work, bad backs, busted joints, are facing an opposition leader who has a history of gutting their pensions. The Conservative Party has members who voted against removing the interest on student loans. And families, if you receive the Canada Child Benefit, know that there is not one Conservative member of Parliament who voted to support you with thousands of dollars every year. Mr. Speaker, there are two choices: a Liberal government who will stand up for families, a Conservative leader who will stand up for himself.
We've got Melanie Jolie. She's a cokehead. I'm positive. Like, just look at those eyes, look at her body language. Person can't be just that stressed.
One thing is clear is I won't tell you, and I will go and have these discussions in cabinet.
Since coming out with the allegations, RCMP, have you seen any change in tone from India? And what do you think of the way that they've responded to the U.S. allegations in comparison to the Canadian allegations?
So when it comes to India, of course, I've been in contact with my counterpart, and we stand by our allegations. And not only that, I think the RCMP did an important, an extraordinary measure by explaining to the public how much the Indian agents here in Canada were involved in the harassment, in the intimidation, in the extortion, and potentially also killing of Canadians. And that's why we expulse Indian diplomats. And my job is to continue to engage India while making sure that they're held to account, and I'll continue to do that.
The allegations, RCMP.
Speaker, of course I will. As I mentioned since the beginning, we have three priorities. First, seek the truth. Second, make sure that we protect Canadians. And thirdly, defend Canada's sovereignty. Based on information provided by the RCMP, we asked India to lift the diplomatic immunity on 6 of their diplomats.
There's other pieces of filth in Trudeau's cabinet besides that. Immigration minister, total goof. Hard to look at, harder to listen to.
And not do it sort of in hushed tones and.
Qu'est-ce que vous pensez de leur démarche? How does he come back to lead a united caucus if that?
Well, I think what you'll see is that the vast majority of caucus and cabinet, the entirety of cabinet is behind him.
Mr. Speaker, is that it's garbage to focus on anything other than the circus clown that he's supporting.
There's so many guys. Yahara Sachs, mental health addictions. This woman is on edge, man.
I have absolute confidence in the Prime Minister.
What do you think of those MPs that are signing this letter and not coming out?
I'm focused on the work that we need to do for
But does that bother you?
Got John Eves Duclos. I think he's procurement services minister. This guy's a pedo, like, I'm guessing.
Insult to all Francophone members in this House, including Conservative members. Is the member trying to tell me that I don't have a right to speak French in this House?
Well, that's for the Bloc to answer. We are certainly focused on making the government work for Canadians. That's exactly what people expect, and that's what we are going to keep doing.
He's such a creep. So weird. Anyhow, guys, this is what we've got going on behind us. I see a person here coming up too. Gonna have a quick chat with my man Willie. He's grooving out to some tunes, I think. Big storm here yesterday. It's calmed down. What's up, Willie? That was a crazy day of wind, man.
Lucky the power didn't go out.
I can't believe the power didn't go out.
We were very lucky.
Do you mind being on camera?
Oh, I don't really like
No, okay. Well, we won't bother with that too much. No. It's all right, man. It's good to see you here. Drop in and see me.
All right.
Yeah, who are the other pieces of shit in the Trudeau dirty, filthy, rotten cabinet? Got Karina Gould. She's such a troll, guys. Like, lies right to your face every day, in question period, thinks nothing of it.
Give the documents over to the House of Commons as it's been voted.
So as I have been very clear, the government has provided thousands of pages of documents. They comply with the charter requirements of the government. The Conservatives are pursuing, their own political partisan vendetta. And as we've heard from expert after expert, including the law clerk yesterday, who raised the fact that he shared the concerns raised by the RCMP and the Auditor General by what the Conservatives are doing right now. So, we will continue to stand up for the rights of Canadians, respect due process of the police, and ensure that this, place remains one where democracy is upheld despite what the Conservatives are doing.
Disclosure and option. Every Canadian is wondering, what is it that he is trying to hide, or what is it that he is trying to protect? It's an easy thing to do. All the other leaders in this place have done it. Why won't the leader of the opposition get his security clearance? Good question.
We've got our piece of shit, Chrystia Freeland.
My friends, a real change.
Squiggle and squirm as you might, it is really hard to put lipstick on a pig.
Like, not only is she a hideous little pig, she's arrogant. Like, in doing so, it would be okay if some of these people had humility. They don't.
The Conservatives talk about the PBO because just a few weeks ago, the PBO did a report on the sustainability of the federal finances. And I'm going to quote what the PBO said. Quote, "Current fiscal policy at the federal level is sustainable over the long term. In fact, according to the PBO, the federal government could even, quote, permanently increase spending by 1.5% of GDP. The only fiscal threat to Canada is Conservatives who would cut health care, child care, national school fees."
No humility to be found. Just investing in Canadians. It's like a bunch of losers. We got little FPC, little rabid Chihuahua, who's really hungry in this video. He's just looking to get something to eat, I guess.
We're here to deliver for Canadians, so that's why. So it was a very good meeting.
Do you think your caucus is unified right now?
We'll have a discussion with our folks tomorrow, but like I said, today was a very good meeting. I know you're all here and wondering, but that was a very good meeting. We have a lot of things to deliver, and that's why I was rushing. I was just grabbing lunch.
Little weasel. In here. Come and visit Guysborough. I'm all Guysborough today. This is a Guysborough shirt from 1982 when they did really well in the midget championships. This is a hat promoting Guysborough. Come and check us out here in Canada's Ocean Playground. Look at where I'm walking, guys. You saw how far this was from my house. I myself, I live solo. Like I have most of my life. I had a very serious head injury when I was a kid. They say it made me weird. I wasn't supposed to survive, but I did. And then after a couple of years, I stopped shaking because my brain was screwed up. I used to shake on my right side. It was the left side of my brain that got hurt in a couple of spots, front and back. But we made it, and we made it home. I bought the house that I live in, like outright. I got lucky on a house deal in Halifax and was able to leave my career, which I hated. I got bullied out of that place. And rest assured, the people that bullied me out of there, I'm coming back for you. I'm gonna fuck you up. But you know what they say about revenge. It's a dish best served cold. Those mofos are gonna get a real cold dish. I'm relentless. Again, I fly solo. Some of you people that say you're family folk will be doing the same. I'm getting you back. I'm gonna fuck you up. You think you're getting away with that? You won't. Look at that. We got a Canadian loon right here. Oh, it took a dive. It's hiding on us. Canadian loony. You know what the job of the loon is in the community, right? It's to warn the others when something of threat has made itself present. That's what my job is. I'm just telling Canadians what I see, man, and to be aware that there is a threat in our area. And it's this federal government. Trudeau and the ministers that we've been discussing. I should take us right down to the point, but we've got to save something for another day. Look at this. That's it, guys. This is Guysborough. Come and check it out. It's as pretty as it is here. The people are even nicer. And, well, I'm not gonna lie, I'm pretty happy to be back. Check this out. Beauty abound. Like, whew, oh my goodness, there. And right over here too. Just behind me again. Ain't it something?
You're on mute, Mr. Brock.
Everyone has an opinion about Canadian federal politics. Oh yeah.
I think our leader, Trudeau, I don't think I've ever heard him say a true word.
Oh, hello. Do you have a warrant to be here?
Oh, yeah. It's time for a change in this country, my friends. A real change.
Wiggle and squirm as you might, it is really hard to put lipstick on a pig.
When I'm Prime Minister, I will keep my promises. WTF.
The one we call Canadian.
Gentlemen, beam me aboard.
Selves are stealing the lifeblood from our city. You are a parasite who leeches off
just like you,
the culture of drugs. Excuse me? What?
I got the shotgun. You got the briefcase. It's on the game though, right?
The one we call Canadian. Canadians.